Hello, this is Simon from Made with Mice, and here I am demonstrating really my approach to lighting using my demo level as supplied with the asset pack, Clean Sci Fi, Modular Corridors and Rooms. Here is my demo level, and I just thought I'd run through my approach to lighting. So hopefully, if you want the same result, you just need to follow similar steps, or just wondering how certain things were achieved, and to explain really my choices as well, and how I got to where I am with this. Excuse me. Essentially, I wanted a balance because after much experimentation with baking light maps, pardon me, just recovering from a cold, experimenting with light mapping in Unity and Beast, and incidentally this is version 4.3 that I authored the pack in, non-pro version, as you can see, that's got the lighter interface, and I use this version because Unity publishes how many people are using which version, and there's still lots of people out there using version 4.3, and I wanted my asset pack to be used by potentially as wide a base as possible. I'm in the process of getting used to Unity 5, and I will produce an update to this as to how to get the very best results, or a good balanced result in Unity 5 as well. But for now, this is Unity 4, and that's the current state of the pack. So anyway, I'll run through this. So using light maps, and the reason I'm using light maps, and just to show you, if you don't, what you get, a bit dark and gloomy. Let's just play this. Some things look very bright. Essentially they're unlit and being lit by the shader, environment maps in the shader, and things that animate as well, being lit in a similar way. Now, why did I do these crates and barrels in this way? Because they don't move. You can't interact with them. They don't move. I mean, it's up to people who are making their own game as to whether they're static props or whether they are kinematic. You could have some physics going on and these things bouncing around or being shot at or whatever. But essentially, I decided that with light map baking, I could cut down on the amount of texture space being used for the light maps on certain things, like these kind of props, so you could have a fair amount of clutter, but not have to have each individual barrel or crate add to your light map budget. And I did that by, well, I'll show you, by essentially giving them a shader that makes them appear lit. Let's just get out of this. Let's turn the light maps back on. Makes them appear lit, and have them be calculated in the lighting process, so that, if I zoom in a bit, when they the light maps get baked for the rooms and so on, the shadows that they throw are actually calculated. There's a drawback. Like I say, I'm explaining my decisions here, and what is good and bad about this. Some things are good, some things are bad. Actually, the barrels are a better example. Here we go. So if this was done perfectly, and you really committed to long bake times and had all the bells and whistles turned on, then you would also have these guys having their own light map budget, and you would see darkening in here where they'd be throwing shadows onto one another and so on. I haven't done that. I've decided for speed and budgetary reasons rather that I'll just have them not throwing shadows onto one another. Again, it's artistic choices that you make as an individual. This is just one choice that I made. So how do you get these guys to do that? Essentially, as props, they haven't got any UVs of their own for light maps, only for their texture. Of course, all the rest of the environment that does have light maps does have that second set of UVs actually calculated by Unity, and they all seem to work just fine. And essentially, this is my process. Now, when you're finalizing the level, you probably want to split up these into their different areas so that they could get culled if you're culling by level or something like that. But for convenience for this process, I have all these props that I call my static props, all grouped together, and here they are. And what I find happens with this is that I have to refresh the renderer, the mesh renderer. As you can see over here, each of these guys has these components, one of which is a mesh renderer. because I've got them all selected. Some of these things aren't exposed. And I did find that this would get messed up because they didn't have lightmap UVs, but I was including them in the bake. I would find that I'd get strange results and there'd be odd patterns on them and stuff like that, and I would have to refresh their mesh renderer. Now my approach is that essentially I take them all and I tell them to cast shadows. Then that gets turned off later, but just choose them all, cast shadows, otherwise you won't get the shadows on the environment. Also go into under edit, render settings, say this is Unity version 4. Under ambient light, I've got a preset here, like a bunch of different colours I've saved, and it's about here I use for this. Not quite halfway and a little bit towards the saturated side, so it's a slightly bluey grey. You can see the effect on this object over here. Yeah, that gets set because if I don't add in some ambient light, I mean with light mapping, just pull it over here so you can see, you get these tabs and this display come up to turn them on and off. And here you go, looking at my maps, and essentially these, I haven't got any true black in here, and that is because of that ambient light setting. You see this grey here, this is the darkest that you get anyway. You won't get any darker than that on there, which isn't ideal because you would want in certain areas of the map, for example the lift shaft over here, for it to be quite dark where there isn't the light. The light moves with the lift as it comes up. You'd like that to be quite, if not pitch black. You can't do that this way around unless you start sectioning off areas and baking it separately, which is entirely possible, but for speed I just didn't do that. So ambient light is a cheat. I'm doing this for speed. If I didn't add that in, my bake, pardon me, this is your default light mapping in Unity 4, your bake would be pretty dark with these settings. In other words, you need GI on. Well, to be strict, and beast settings XML, you can fiddle around with settings and then turn GI on and off. I believe, I haven't tried it myself. I use something else. Here's something else. The something else is light mapping extended, and this is free from the Unity Asset Store. Just look for it in there, and if you're using Unity 4 and you're doing light map baking and you haven't got this, then you're really missing out. This is great. I can't remember the name of the developer, I do beg your pardon, sir, but yeah, do look for it. It's great. And essentially here, look, you've got more settings, and I'm going to global illumination, make sure it's off. My reason for doing this is speed. You get a better result if you turn it on, but your baking times are much longer. And if you want a quick turnaround, or if you've got a large level, or for whatever reason you just don't like waiting for this kind of thing, then turn it off, which is what I did. But you get darker renders because global illumination throws more light around. It calculates the bounces around, so you get it essentially reuses the light as it bounces around the level, and it gets brighter. So without it, you get a darker result. To offset that, I use the ambient light setting to add in more light, and it's a cheat for sort of very simply reproducing that kind of GI look. Whew, long-winded explanation. There you go. Single light maps, again, you can go dual directional. For speed, again, that's just my choice. I wanted them to be not much memory overhead. I've got 10 single light maps, and if you go into for directional, you get extra light maps going in there, and it takes up more memory, and so on and so forth. So it's all, swings and roundabouts. You just sort of have to balance what you're going for, speed, memory footprint, what looks good for you. I think I've got a good balance between, how it looks and, the memory and the performance and so on. So just explaining my process. So I've set that. I've set all my props, static props, to be throwing shadows, and I should be able to now calculate that lighting. So I've just closed those windows, haven't I? Let's open them up again. Light mapping and light mapping extended. And I may have an edit, just make doubly sure it's off, edit here when I click bake. Well, I've already got them here, haven't I? Anyway, it's pretty quick, essentially. So I'll probably edit here, and you'll see the results shortly.